Hi everyone, welcome to the funding fair. We'll just give you a few seconds just to come online. The participant number is growing. I'll give you a moment or two just to come through. We'll get started. Kia ora, taka lava, ni hao, good morning. Hello, happy Thursday everyone. Great to see you all. My name is Stephanie Maitland and it's my pleasure to again be your host for ANCAD's Funding Forum. I know how important trust and grant funding is for many, and so the tips and information you'll receive today will sure to be of help. I now invite Fiona Brennan, Chief Executive of ANCAD, to say a few words.
Kia ora koutou, how mai everyone. A warm welcome to our funding forum on behalf of the team at ANCAD. We special welcome to our guest speakers this morning who've taken time out of their busy funding roles to come and share their tips and tricks and help us understand a little bit more about organisations that they work with and support our fundraising aims and goals in general. Our funding strategies and work really are about building we hope this morning gives some insights into how you can build on the relationships you already have with funders, start new relationships, and strengthen your strategic alignment so that you can increase the impact for the communities that you serve. So I hope this morning is a valuable opportunity. We at the ANCAD team that can support organisations with their capability development. So you're always welcome to contact us. And if we can be of support or point you in the right direction, we're always happy to do so. I'm going to hand back now. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Fiona. In case you're not aware, ANCAD offers a range of educational opportunities through its Lift Aotearoa program, supported by the Tyndall Foundation and Foundation North. I now ask Simon Ritchie, ANCAD's Training and Capability Lead, to share more information.
Thank you, Stephanie, and kia ora, folks. It's great that you're here with us. I oversee the training, as Stephanie has said, for the Lift Aotearoa program, which is ANCAD's capability building framework for capability in community and not-for-profit organisations. I'm sure many of you have participated over the years. If you haven't, you're most welcome to visit the site, which is just up there at lift.nz. On the next slide, we have opportunities for all the team, really. We have a leadership series here called Leadership in Times of Change. We offer this online, so anybody throughout New Zealand is able to participate. And we usually run these for about 90 minutes, starting from about 10 in the morning on one day of the week. And we run about 5 of these topics throughout the year. Happy to email folks a link to this, or it's available on the website to have a look as well. On the next slide, there are opportunities for governance, trustees, board members, committee members as well, to participate in a series that is thankfully funded by the Tyndall Foundation, and we can offer this for free. We do have some deeper dive sessions within this on topics that are maybe of interest to particular cohorts, chairs, and so on and so forth. And again, happy to email the links to this series, and it's on the Lift website as well. As well as these, we offer a number of different topics on social media and planning strategy and financial issues as well. So Stephanie, on the next slide, I'm happy to talk to folks about the funding guide. So ANCAD produces and publishes this once every year. This particular one is an updated version and an expanded version. So this is going to be really useful, we believe, an up-to-date resource designed really to help community organisations navigate the funding landscape with more clarity and confidence. It brings together the key funders, some application insights. We've got some planning prompts there, some templates available just to help you move from that kind of guesswork to more a strategic approach. So there we have it. That's the funding guide. And finally, from me on the next slide, you are more than welcome to subscribe to our weekly In Focus community news, really. So lots of information to do with the lift training, to do with other community news and events for all. So folks, there you go.
Thanks, Simon. So our program for today, first up we have Foundation North, then the Mount Wellington Charitable Trust, the Elsie Steele Trust, which potentially is a new funder for you, Four Winds Foundation, and then Sam from Auckland Council. So, some housekeeping. A copy of the presenter's slides we provided will be emailed to you. This webinar is also being recorded, and information on how to watch will also be sent. At the end of each presentation, the speaker will answer as many questions as time allows. Please put your questions in the Q&A box. This is the only box I'll be monitoring, and I'll do my best to get as many answered as possible. But before we get to the presentations and your questions, there's a couple of questions for you. Simon, the 2 poll questions, please.
Thank you for that reminder, Stephanie. Here we go. All right, folks, a couple of questions here. I'm going to launch this poll. We'd love your feedback just to set the scene and help our funders with their presentation and where they can direct their focus as well. And I'll share it so that we can all understand where things are at. 2 questions. The first one is a single choice answer. How confident do you feel about your organised? Oh, this is part 2. Oh, I've gone back to front. Okay, Stephanie, we're going to start with this one and we'll probably put the other one in later. How about that? So, folks, good opportunity just to indicate your confidence levels. This is part 2. I'll throw part 1 a bit later on, as we say. So, yeah, just as they're going, I'll end the poll very, very shortly. Just give people a little bit more time. At the moment, we're seeing people a little bit unsure, figuring things out. Most have somewhat confidence. There is a group there that are quite concerned, and just a small group who are very, very confident. All right, folks, well, I'm going to end this poll now, and here we go, and I'll go ahead and share the results. All right, so there we have it. So we've got an indication that most people are still figuring things out, but there is a little bit of confidence in the room as well, and that's where that is, Stephanie.
Great. Thanks, Simon. So just a reminder, questions in the Q&A box for our presenters. So our first speaker today is Josh Martin, Engagement Advisor with Foundation North, a key funder for many. Thanks for being here, Josh. Over to you.
Morena tātou, ko Josh Martin ahau, he uri ahau no tai tokiro me awahau. And I'm an engagement advisor here at Foundation North. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Stephanie, Simon, and Fiona. I will go through a few different slides. So I think that it feels quite generic, but I think it will be helpful. And when there are tips and tricks, maybe I'll throw some extra things at the end there. I suppose that my first thought is that if you have questions, do ask them in the question and answer box. And but maybe don't make it specific to your organization, just make it general. But if you do want to have a hui later on, then we can talk about that as well. I'm just going to share my screen now. All right. I've already done my introduction. I'll skip on. Okay, who is Foundation North? We're a community trust. We were created in 1988. Basically, a whole lot of money was split between 2 to 12 different community trusts. And that money that we got back in 1988 has been reinvested. The money that comes back to Auckland come back to us is then split between Auckland and Taitokito. That's where our endowment is focused on. And it kind of works out to be around $50 million a year, though last year we had $70 million to split. And that's obviously really helpful if the increase is really helpful. $20 million is quite a noticeable increase. Our vision is Whātitiki Oranga Enhanced Lives. Be the of the pūtea that we're given and to be able to help enhance the lives of our communities. There's a high volume of need and high volume of requests that we receive. So the only way for us to be intentional about where our pūtea goes and the way that we can make the greatest impact is by having a strategy. And we have a 15-year strategy, and we're about halfway through that. The way that our strategy works is that our funding is pulled into these 4 areas: increased equity, social inclusion, regenerative environment, and community support. I'll talk more to them a bit later on. Okay, the funding framework. There are 2 pathways generally that you can come into Foundation North for in order to get funding. And inside of those 2 funding pathways, which is community funding and impact funding, there are 3 levels. The 3 levels are quick response grants, which are anything under $25,000. I call it delegated authority, so anything under $200,000 stays in-house and only goes up to the CEO level, and it doesn't go up to trustees. But then anything over $200,000 will have to go up to the trustees, who then make the decision. This is really important when it comes to your ask and what it is that you might like to request from us, because as you can imagine, if it goes up to the trustees, there's going to be a more stringent and deeper investigation into the request, and a lot more questions are asked, which is awesome and necessary to ensure that the pūtea is going to the right places. If it's under $200,000, then obviously it means that it stays in-house, still goes through the same process of the assessment, but also it only lands at the CEO level, which is really helpful for you to know. But what that means is more people requesting under $200,000, which increases the timeline that you can expect to receive an answer for. So our 2 pathways: community funding. Basically, this is our about responding to what our community needs and the aspirations and initiatives that contribute to our vision. And our vision is enhanced lives and being good guardians of our pūtea. Anyone can come into the community funding pathway by just clicking on a link on our website. Impact funding, on the other hand, can only be invited in by one of the kaimahi here at Foundation North. And this is, even though you can read those words for yourself, but basically what impact funding is that it's something that might be new, something that is about systems change, something that's got an intergenerational impact. And those words, they're working collaboratively and creatively, enables us to proactively and flexibly fund innovative approaches that enhance the kaupapa of our focus areas. So there could be things that have not happened before. A really good example of this is an organization like Body Positive, who work with people who have HIV or AIDS. The way that they've historically done it, their system that they've always done, is that a nurse will come in and deliver the medication or the mahi that needs to happen. This has become a barrier for those who might feel uncomfortable talking to a professional in that way. So what they've done, a systems change that they've implemented, is that they've now taken it to the community, sort of trained community members who have lived experiences, who may have HIV or AIDS themselves, and they then can deliver the engagement themselves. We've funded them, and they're still overseen by a healthcare worker, like a nurse and doctors, but the community only needs to go to the community members themselves. So they've seen a massive increase in the last year, like by 300%, just by changing their system. So that might be an example of what impact funding is. This is also a really difficult pathway to explain, because what is impact? Who can say what impact is? Your day-to-day life might be, or your day-to-day mahi might be impactful. But this is, like I said, something that's innovative, something that's new, something that's fresh, something that changes the system, and something that impacts an intergenerational approach. So there might be a seed today that doesn't manifest for 5 or 10 years, but we would still see that as impactful. So that requires a discussion. Just another quick recap: quick response grants are anything under $25,000. And we aim, and aim is a very important word here, everybody. We aim to give you a decision within 2 months. That's not necessarily correct all the time, depending on the number of requests that we get, but that is something to be aware of. Over $25,000 and under $200,000. Actually, this is probably for all of them. We aim to give it to you within 5 months, and that's pretty accurate at the moment. I'll just quickly touch on this. This is another possibility: capacity and capability support. Often, if part of your request might be around needing support for your governance structure, maybe you need budgeting support, or you're uncertain about, I don't know, you might need your CEO might need support, whatever it looks like for you, there is a possibility that we might be able to offer some capacity and capability support. And Rochelle Marshall from Foundation North is someone who looks after that. As I said earlier, there are 4 funding areas that we talk to in our application process. These are our theories of change. So even though they're just our funding areas, it's about what we believe is our theory of change. So increased equity, as you can see here, we will support approaches that achieve aspirations of Māori and Pacific communities and address systemic and intergenerational inequalities in South Auckland and Northland. We also prioritize solutions that place children and young people at the centre. Increased equity really is about Māori Pacifica, Mātauranga Māori, Mātauranga Pacifica. So where it's a by for with model, that really is about seeing the possibilities and access to opportunities increase as delivered by Māori and Pacifica for Māori and Pacifica. Social inclusion. We support approaches that reduce discrimination and racism and increase social inclusion. Former refugees, new migrants, fewer than 5 years in New Zealand, rainbow communities, and people living with a disability are our priorities. This is really about those communities that I've just named in there, as well as South Auckland and Tai Tokiro, being able to see themselves in the community around them. Again, it's a by, for, with model. So for body positive, by rainbow people, for rainbow people. And it's really important. So that social inclusion, regenerative environment. We support joined up approaches to conserving, restoring, and renewing the environment so that te taeao, the environment, and people can flourish together. Initiatives proposed by tangata whenua are our priorities. So this is obviously around climate action, climate change. And community support. So if you're like, well, we don't really fit into any of those 3, or you might fit into this one, I guess you can consider this as a catch-all. We support participation in positive activities that improve community well-being. So we support a lot of different community groups in Tāmaki and Tai Tokiro, which is where our funding goes to. So if you're unsure if you fit into the other ones, then very likely that you'll land in community support. What I would also say is that our strategy, which is around ensuring that our priority communities, i.e. Māori, Pacifica, new migrants, refugees, disability, rainbow, rangatahi, and tamariki, as well as South Auckland and Tai Tokiro, they should still be identified in this community support. For our useful guides, this is what you can click here. You'll be getting these slides anyway, so feel free to go there. Application tips: who, when, what, why, and how. So answer the questions. And that seems like a really obvious thing to say, but often we will get in an application someone responding to the application or the question without really answering it and kind of telling us what they think we might like to hear. For example, what do you need money for? What would you like the funding for? An example might be, we need it for kaimahi. We do support operational expenses. So just tell us exactly what it is you need. Some people might like to say that we want it to change lives, or that we want to build a community. Telling us how is really helpful. Also, in terms of our exclusion and limitation policies, there are things that we cannot fund and we will not fund. So we have that on our website. Our organizations can only receive 1 grant every 12 months. And this here, lastly, our team is here to work with you and to support you. I can only imagine how frustrating it would be to be working on your application and to be stuck and to feel like you're unable to reach out. We really want to ensure that you know that you're able to call us or to email us or whatever it is that you need. We don't expect you to sit there and get frustrated. We understand that the application process can be quite challenging and quite hard and quite a long process and can require a lot of time. So where possible, please feel free to call our support team. They're always ready to help. And as you can imagine, our engagement team and my role is to work with specific groups to be able to hear their whakaaro, or hear what their kaupapa is, and figure out how they might be able to apply and what might be helpful them in big rohe. So where we can, we will get our funding support team to also help you. We hold awhi sessions, which is a hui at Foundation North, where you can bring in your kaupapa and have a chat and get some real-time answers as well. This is our website, our email, and our phone number. So, ngā mihi nui kia koutou. I will stop sharing and I'm prepared to take any questions or work through the list there.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate that. So some questions for you. As a club, we're trying to grow our cash reserves to ensure we are sustainable. Is there a limit to how much we should try to have in our bank account before it will impact us getting grants? I.e., will you think that we have enough money ourselves to cover the requested expense? And that's from Ben.
Kia ora, Ben. Yeah, I really hear this question a lot, and I understand what you're asking. I guess the answer is maybe. You might need to have a certain amount. For example, we have a lot of newer organizations who come in who don't necessarily have don't have money in their account, have got very little amount of money, but they're coming in to help seed and grow an idea. So we can consider that as a seed funding. So for example, Gender Firm, a new organization that came in, they didn't have anything, they were just very new, but their kaupapa was so important. We could really see the impact on the rainbow community and social inclusion. So as a result, they didn't need to have money in their accounts. We really understood that we were going to help seed this idea, and they're now 2 years into it and they're doing really well. But if you're a longer serving organization, then perhaps we would expect there to be money just because you've had a longer time to kind of prepare. But in saying that, if you don't, we really understand that what you might need is some capability and capacity building support because you don't really know how to build your funding reserves. So that's also something we could consider, which is what I talked to earlier. But yeah, we're really open to discuss that. But the short answer is no. If you need to ask for money, then please feel free to reach out.
Right, thank you. Is there any indication that you may review or revise your policy on health funding?
I'm imagining that this is about the single health fund. The single I mean, I'm not a trustee, so I can't say yes or no. But what I can say is that we understand the frustrations of it and understand the importance of an organization that focuses specifically and intentionally on one health matter. So the discussions are happening. I just couldn't give you a timeline on what they might look like, but it is something that we bring up quite a lot because we understand the importance of a single health issue.
Okay, thank you. Do you have people that help with filling out the application forms from an anonymous attendee?
Thank you, anonymous attendee. We do have the ability for you to call if you do need some help. What I would suggest is that you give it a go, like try and populate things. There are questions in there like, what do you need money for, or what would you like the funding for, that you would be able to answer. But if you're like, I'm not sure which of these 4 funding areas I fit into, give us a call. Really happy to discuss that. And just to talk to those 4 funding areas, you can only select one. You might think, oh, wow, my kaupapa could fit into all of them. And that's what's confusing. Just pick the one that feels most aligned to you.
Okay. So how important, again, anonymous attendee, how important is scale in your considerations for over the $25,000 grants? About impact affects 10 tarangahahi, is that seen less favourably to your body positive example of 300% change?
No, I wouldn't say. I mean, it's really hard to say. It varies depending on the kaupapa. When I think about the body positive question, that was certainly, I mean, they didn't know what they were going to, the increase either, you know. So the answer is no, it wouldn't look unfavorably at that because impact on 10 rangatahi is still impact. And it really just depends on what the evidence of need might be. And that's another question in our application process is what's the evidence of need? Why do you want to deliver this program? Why these 10 rangatahi? And so it really is just depending on who or what the organization is and what it is you need support with.
Are you noticing an increase in organisations having to return project grant funding because they can't raise sufficient match funding to fund the full project?
Not noticeably. In match funding, it's not something that we do all the time, and it is really something that we're doing less and less of at the moment. So We do like to be a funder who funds in partnership, or if we know that council are funding a little part of it, that's quite a good thing for us. But if you can't get the match funding, then yeah, I mean, the answer is no to your question. I'm not really noticing a difference. Most people are able to get a little bit of support.
Okay, so lots of questions for you, Josh. So is there any assistance for capital building projects?
Yes, there is. So that happens every other year. So we're currently in the expression of interest. It's up on the website now, I think, all the information. If it's not, then it will be coming soon. So the community building project takes place once every 2 years. Like I said, the first round is just an expression of interest, where you still have to have a whole lot of evidence necessary in order for you to kind of go through the pipeline. You're then assessed and then moved on to the second round. So we're currently in the middle of that now. So if you want more information, that's on the website, or you can call our funding support team.
Okay, Anna Lily is asking, do I understand correctly that the impact funding is only available for people who've been asked by Foundation North? How can we as a conservation organisation be on the list of considered?
No, that is not right. I'm sorry if I confused you. What we're saying is that we might be talking in a conversation, and you might be saying, "Oh, we're going to come in for an application. We're going to chat. We want to ask for this amount of money, and this is the mahi we're going to do." When I hear that, and I hear the markers of this is something innovative, it's intergenerational, the systems change here, then I would engage in a conversation with you, and then I would say, hey, this sounds like it could be impact funding, and then I would be able to like shift it across and have a discussion in-house, and then would air it in-house and figure out if it is impact funding or not. The reason why understanding the two pathways, i.e. community granting or impact funding, is that our funding, what we have been 50%. 50% goes to, we'll try to shift you into impact funding if there is those markers that are apparent.
Mm-hmm. Do you fund multi-year applications, for example, staff wages for more than 1 year? From Nigel.
We can consider it. Kia ora, Nigel. We can consider it. Yeah.
Okay. We're a new Enviro hub and setting up the hub for community. Does any funding apply for things like heat pumps and laptops, etc.?
Yeah, I would say that those are operational expenses. So, I mean, you can certainly request it.
Mm-hmm. Craig's asking, what is the process to contacting you to set up a meeting to discuss our hui?
Yep. So I would call in at Foundation North, call the 0800 number. The details are will be sent to you.
Okay. So also anonymous attendees wanting the phone number, the information will come out to you. Ben is asking, I'd like to check whether Foundation North provides funding for recurring annual events. We host a Chinese cultural event on the North Shore each year, and we're grateful to receive funding from Foundation North last year. I'm wondering if Foundation North would consider supporting our event again this year.
Yeah, I'm not an assessor, but what I would say is that if your community requires it, then I would apply again. We wouldn't say no just because you asked for it last year, but it's important to know that we do have limitations when it comes to the amount of money we will consider for an event. So not no, but certainly we could certainly consider it.
Okay. Maria, your answer is annually. So once you get money, you've got 12 months to spend and account for it. From Gloria, regarding the one application limit of 1 per year for NGOs that are part of a group, e.g. housing organisations and a health organisation, can each entity apply individually, or is it considered the one application under the group or the legal entity?
Wait, hold on. I feel like I'm in the Matrix. Let me just use my Neo brain. What I'm thinking is that what you're asking is if there's 3 different entities that have applied for a fund. It depends on how you did it, is the answer to that question. If all 3 of you applied for the application and you're named on it, then probably that would be considered your one. But if it's one organization that's applied, then it's likely there's a possibility that the other 2 could apply as well. You're going to need to call because that's a really hard thing to answer without having clarity of the question.
Yes, because when you're under that group scheme through the charity services and for your account, whether everyone can apply or whether it's one. So Gloria, contact Foundation North and have a chat, and they'll be more than happy to help you. Anthony, it's all of Auckland that are eligible to apply. There's no specific suburbs. Further question re cash reserves. Is it possible that having healthy cash reserves may mean you are less likely to have a successful application? Should we let our cash reserves run down?
I think talking to what those cash reserves are for are important, and they will consider it. If you've got a lot of money in your account that it's just in case, the just in case money is different from this amount of tagged to particular project or tagged to that specific kaupapa or whatever. That's a lot clearer than just we've got $100,000 just in case we run out of money. That will be considered, and it will look like that you've got the money you've got the ability to pay for whatever it is you're requesting. So talk to why you have that money.
Okay. Can we bundle needs in one application? I assume that's asking for lots of things in one application.
Yes. Yes, you can.
Do the 4 funding areas have the same funding pool available, or is it based on an amount of applications?
The 4 funding areas, no. The 50-50 split is between the 2 areas, the 2 funding pathways, and however you're coming in, it doesn't really matter. We do like to try and give more money to social inclusion, regenerative environment, and increased equity because they're very specific in their target and the impact. But that's not to say that if you fall under community support that you won't be eligible. It's just that we try to up the other 3 because they're very specific and targeted.
We're just on time for you, so I'll cover them quick questions. Can funding for supporting new organisations cover the rent costs? Is funding available for new organisations able to cover their rental expenses?
Yes, is the answer to that. And I mean, again, it really depends. First year, yeah, we can definitely consider it. And consider is a really good word because it's not guaranteed, but we can consider it. And for operational expenses, we only consider 30% of last year's cost. So if it's $100,000 last year, we can consider up to 30% of that for this year's.
Should I align my application to cover all the focus areas or just focus on one?
Just one.
Okay. Do you look more favourably at organisations that have strong numbers on social media platforms?
Neither here nor there, to be honest.
We're on the downward slide, Josh. Couple more. Would also like to ask whether Foundation North would consider funding a contract event coordinator role, as we understand that funding for personnel can sometimes be difficult to obtain.
For Foundation North, it's the same thing. We can consider roles.
Okay. We're a religious organisation and we're celebrating our 20-year anniversary next year. Is that something we could get support on?
Possibly. I'd call to talk to one of the advisors.
And do you cover venue hire costs as opposed to office
same thing.
costs?
We can consider it.
Okay. Done. We've run through all of those. Josh, thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here this morning, your knowledge, your wisdom, and for helping answer all those questions. That's just great. Thank you. We really appreciate you and what Foundation North does to the community, does for the community. Thank you.
Tēnā koe. Thank you very much, Steph.
Great. Our next speaker this morning is Rob Wakeland, General Manager of the Mount Wellington Charitable Trust. Welcome, Rob. Really glad you could join us today. Over to you.
Kia ora, good morning, Atamare. Ngā mihi kia koutou, ko humai nei mō te kōrerorero o te wānei. Kia ora tātou. Thanks very much for having me, Stephanie and team. Bit of a treat, and we're one of the newer trusts around. Just by way of background before I launch some slides, the Mount Wellington Licensing Trust, licensing trusts in New Zealand, some of you will be familiar with, were set up post-war, largely looking around the control of liquor, but also as provision of hospitality and accommodation providers in the community. So since then, the Mount Wellington Licensing Trust has had to operate businesses, being hotel, hospitality, selling liquor, working hard all year to run those big businesses in the hope they make profit, which can then be distributed to the community. As we know in business, and if you read a newspaper, hospitality at the moment is in a very tough place. So making that profit isn't always a given. And then obviously in the context of a hotel, even in the years you do make a profit, you've probably got your room manager or your groundsman or whatever wanting to contest some of that to do some upgrades of their own. So there was a lot of bother for a very unpredictable and often not significant outcome for the community itself. So kind of controversially, about a year ago, the Mount Wellington Licensing Trust sold up all of its business assets. It had been identified from a risk perspective too. All in a single asset class, being property, in a single postcode, if you like. So there's a ton of exposure there, and obviously over the last couple of years, we've seen the struggles of the economy and the hospo. So it was pretty controversial. All of those proceeds, they specialise in general. We want this nest egg to be chugging away till the end of time, basically, to benefit their community. And we've actually just last week closed our first funding round under the new guys. And this funding round, we have over $700,000 of the highest amount the charitable trust previously. And so that alone is a good measure. But, you know, on the other side, there's a ton of need out there, and that $700,000 is 5 times oversubscribed based on the applications we've received. So our granting committee is definitely going to be working for their biscuits over the next few weeks as they start to assess and recommend those applications for outcomes. But I guess the good news is there's $700,000 of previously $700,000 that previously wasn't given to that quite tight community. So we've got to look upon that positively, and we can't wait to announce our first set of recipients. I'll get my screen going and just run through some of our criteria in that. That won't take very long at all, and then more than happy just to get hammered with questions. Which of course isn't happening.
It worked when we tested before, so
yeah,
take a moment, it's all good.
Didn't. Simon, are you able to whip it up at your end? It's not appearing for me to share, even though we did test it.
Give me a few moments. Stephanie, feel free to fill in. I won't be too long.
Okay.
Apologies, team.
That's all right. So we can ask a question of you that's popped up while Simon's fixing that. So
Sure.
the current round, with the round potentially is on your slides, but to fill some time, if the round is currently closed, when's the next one?
Yeah, so we'll confirm the exact dates, but we'll have an application window open during July, August, closing late August, and we'll have decisions by the end of September and funding distributed by end of September. That'll be the next round. And
do you hope to have 2 rounds per year going forward?
Yeah. This initial round, we're at the end of a financial year, right? So the 2026 financial year, we're giving away all at once. Given we've just launched, future plans are to have 2 rounds per year, split exactly in half, no different criteria. So that'll help with organisations that might be seasonal or those, you know, just timing their application abilities. So yeah, roughly speaking, that February-ish close-off date and end of August close-off date will be what we look at moving forward. Probably the exception to that is in local body election years. The licensing trust is a political body with elections, and we'll be unable to give away money in that election period, so we'll have to change our distribution dates in those years. Brilliant. Thanks, Simon. Assuming everyone could see that screen. Look, we're our own body, basically, the Mount Wellington Charitable Trust. It's not like gaming societies or whatever, where there's that umbrella of legislation over the top of them. I've spent 20 years working on the other side of the table, begging for funding and navigating funding environments. Some funds are very prescriptive, and that can be quite tough work when you know you're doing great work, but you might not quite fit into a criteria. So we've tried to keep our criteria as broad and open as possible. We want to take away as many bars to applying as we can. And like I said, we really want to make our committee work for their biscuits. So the 2 main criteria there are to benefit the residents of the Mount Wellington Licensing Trust area. And roughly speaking, that's Maunga to Maunga, being Mount Wellington, down to Mount Hobson, top end of Otahuhu there, out to the Tamaki River, and it's a little bit fickle coming through that boundary between Mount Wellington and Ellerslie. There is a map on our website that defines it. So the residents of that area must benefit from the project being funded. Now, that doesn't mean that either the organisation applying or the activity itself needs to take place in the area. Quick example I could think of, say a school program happening at Stardome. If it benefits the schools in our area, but in order to fully deliver the program has to be off-site somewhere else, that's fine, so long as the benefit lands with the residents. We're aware it's obviously quite a tight little community. There'll be organisations or events or projects happening around the fringes and maybe even just outside that area. We'd just ask you to furnish some sort of evidence or some sort of, communication around how it does benefit those residents. So, for example, a school could take a percentage of their database of students that come from within that area, and that would be enough to make them eligible. The outcome might be scaled accordingly, but you definitely would be able to apply. And then the other criteria is around meeting one or more purposes of the Mount Wellington Charitable Trust deed. Now, bear in mind, this was written 60 years ago, so post-war. At some point it will be reviewed, but given a bit of the community misgivings about these steps, we're not launching into it. We're back in a sort of building our new reputation phase. So it's very focused on welfare of people, of disabled, of veterans, of mental health. It does allow to support religious projects. Sport and cultural is included. It's pretty broad. So in our funding round just closed, we've had 99 applicants come in, and what's really pleasing is there's a really broad spread of purposes and focus, and there's some really grassroots community organisations involved there. So we've removed criteria such as being a registered charity, being an incorporated society, that sort of thing. It's okay if it's just a small, less formal group. However, the less formal it is, we would be asking for some form of endorsement or referencing from other community groups with a bit of standing, just so we're doing our due diligence. But again, we're just trying to take away as many barriers as possible as we can for people to come to the table and for us to support that local community. You could flip it through there, Simon, please. So our 2027 financial year, the following round, there's some dates there. They may be TBC, but that's a pretty good indicator of when we'll be looking to run that next granting round. Basically July, August, open to make the application, and then consideration and decision making through September. One of our funding rules is that no organisation will receive more than 1/10 of the available funds. Now, for this, based on our current year figures, that would be a total pool of $360,000. So a maximum cap of funding of $36,000. We have a formula based on our investment performances. So that figure may differ slightly, but it's been designed deliberately to flatten itself out and not go in peaks and troughs relative to any sort of financial markets. So that's a fairly decent indicator of where you could be aiming an application. Obviously, if you have a much smaller need, the chances of being successful are probably a lot higher. If we get 50 odd applications at the maximum amount, the chances of them all being successful are nil, of course, and the chances of many at that top end being included are probably pretty slim too. Just to sort of balance out who we're funding and trying to keep away from forming any sort of reliance on one source of funding, we won't approve any grants for more than 1/5 of an organisation's turnover. So using the example of that maximum amount, if your total organisation turnover is, somewhere between that $150,000 to $200,000, that would come into play. If you're turning over more than that, you could go for that maximum, but that scales downwards. So, if you want to apply for $1,000, but your total turnover is only $3,000, we would need you to scale down to be less than that 1/5. Again, we're trying to keep it pretty slim on the aspects of criteria. We really want people to be able to come to the table pretty easy. The application itself, you can rattle out in a couple of hours tops. The biggest thing we ask for, we obviously ask you to describe who will benefit from the project, and that's your chance to talk about nailing that Mount Wellington area really well. The key aspect that decisions will be made on, though, and it's really following the themes of Josh's presentation, is what impact is this going to have? That's what we're looking at. If we're funding things that really just keep, an organisation going through the motions, we're less interested in that as we are at making a visible impact in our community, because our trust is very local. We do have a pretty tough community out there with eyes on us, so we really want to see that funding being leveraged as hard as we can for local community impact. In terms of what you can apply for, it's really open. Again, I've come from the other side of the table, and I know too well that there might be an organisation that has well-established funding relationships that support salaries, but they could really, really do with some help with the power bill. Well, that's fine, because what it relates to is what impact you have. Part of the application is being able to say why you're applying for that specific purpose. So that would be your chance to say, well, we have great relationships in this space, we have a need in this space. We know the organisation right next door might be the exact opposite of that. So we're not trying to be too strict on what you should apply for. It just relates to what impact does that have overall out there in our community. That is pretty much the application. It's pretty light. The higher amount you're looking at, we might ask you to furnish things like a annual report or set of annual financials, but we've deliberately kept it reasonably light on documentation, and probably the experience of the application round just gone, it's not particularly helpful to have a massive tome of information attached to the application, because our granting committee won't have time nor inclination to be wading through a 20-page proposal. We'd rather just you work really hard to be succinct and offer your answers to the application questions with clarity in the fields offered. It's a lot smoother. Want well, things happen. That's what you're so good at. So yeah, we're working really hard to make it user friendly and getting it, and then our decision on impact in our community. As I've said, we're in the local community and making so those that are out on the fringes or even outside the area might sort of battle first round. Over time, we'd hope to be able to support a really wide range of groups, but we're going to have our work cut out. Initially, will be a challenge for our committee as to what filters they put in place to make those decisions. But keep coming back. We really don't want to be like some trusts where we tuck favourites under our wings and they get something every time and others never get close. Over time, we do want to spread that benefit through the community, because it's obviously the community that benefits from that wide range of services put in front of them. Finally, just to pick up on Josh's point, which it's a bit of a hospital pass following him. I thought he gave an amazing presentation, but that whole idea of partnership, if we can get into co-funding projects with other bodies, our ultimate outcome is being a magnet to draw more investment into our local area. So if you bring us a proposal where you already are partly funded by other bodies and you need support to close it out, that would be really, really well thought of from our end. Yeah, please.
Back to Ben's question at the beginning for Josh around reserves. So is that one of the things you might be looking at in this current round or maybe in future rounds, as to how financially stable an organisation is, what reserves they have?
Yeah, thanks. No, we wouldn't give it a hell of a lot of consideration. Again, having spent many years on the other side of the table, I actually really value organisations put themselves into a position of security and continuity, sustainability. So it's not going to be a massive consideration for us. One thing I missed, we do not fund for-profit entities in any way. So commercial type businesses, registered companies won't be able to apply. They would have to be funded, like that would have to be on the basis of them offering their services to a non-profit who makes the application of receiving that service. We're aware there's plenty of providers out there that might come to schools and what have you. The application would have to come from the school itself to promote the benefit of receiving that service. But yeah, don't waste too much sleep on good cash reserves. It's all about the impact being delivered to our community.
Okay, so can you just clarify? So organisations that are outside of the Mount Wellington Charitable Trust area can apply as long as they are providing a program or service that directly benefits the people within your geographical area.
I don't need to add a thing to that. Yep. Bang on. Yep.
Okay, so that answers 2 or 3 of those. Are the decision makers deciding the applications, are they independent? How were they appointed?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have a couple of different entities in our group. So the licensing trust is the elected body, the political body. The charitable trust is a non-profit charity set up to support the community in this way. We're actually asking our elected members of the licensing trust to swap hats and sit around the granting committee table. We could design some sort of recruitment criteria to form a committee that has standing in the community, that knows their local community, that has experience working and delivering service to the community. Well, that process already exists. Every 3 years, people stand for election to the licensing trust and have to win the confidence and support of the local community. So we're utilising those same people, and obviously the back end of that is that they become accountable back to their community every 3 years for the decisions they've made. So it's the same people, and that probably is also relevant why we won't be able to be considering or distributing grants during the election period every 3 years, but that has no impact other than shuffling up the dates we run our application windows. Yeah.
And just confirm that you do fund small organisations that aren't registered yet, that don't have legal entities, so not Incorporated Society, Charitable Trust. But
yeah, 100%. We want all of those groups to come to the table. Probably just the smaller or less formalised you are, though, we would want that to be balanced out by some level of endorsement or referencing from other organisations in the community that might benefit from your services or be aware of your services. That we need to do our due diligence. We can't be in a position of funding an organisation that slips off the face of the earth next week once the funds are deposited. So we need to have that level of security given to us, but we don't want that lack of registration or lack of formality to be an impediment to coming to the table.
Okay, last question. Do you think other trusts will switch to your model of selling assets and creating an investment fund? Is this the way of the future in your view?
I can only give an opinion based on nothing, but look, the licensing trusts around the country, from 70, 80 odd years ago, they have diversified rapidly into their services, and some trusts are still running incredibly strong businesses under their current operating models, but they've gone down very different paths to what the starting point was. I think it's a case-by-case answer for that. There are a lot watching what we do with interest, but that's not to say everybody's lining up to pull the ripcord and do the same thing. I think it's relative to each trust's local community, their current business model, and obviously their performance executing that business model. So I can't give any definitive answer, but at this point, like our community really pushed back on that decision because, for 60 years, they'd driven past those buildings and been able to see bricks and mortar. That's perhaps a generational view on life, that bricks and mortar equals success. There are many different ways to leverage your capital and do good things with it. And our trust ultimately decided there was a better way of doing that. yeah, that's how we came to where we are. And obviously, we're only a year in, but on the metrics available to date, it's been a fantastic move. But you know, the proof will be in the pudding over the longer term. But we want to be dishing out this community support every year from now to eternity. That's what it's all geared up to do.
Yeah, and that sounds fantastic. Rob, thank you. I appreciate you joining us this morning. You were brilliant and loved the info. And I expect you to be even further oversubscribed in the next funding round that you've got coming up. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
So our next speaker, moving right along, is James Cook, Treasurer of the Elsie Steele Trust, an unknown funder for some. Welcome, James. Glad you could join us today, and we appreciate that you've stepped in at short notice due to one of your fellow committee members becoming unavailable. So, James, over to you. Just need to unmute yourself. There you go.
It should be okay now. Yeah.
You're perfect. Thanks, James.
Well, we're very different from the two organisations that have spoken to date.
I know, that's why you're here, so we get complete different viewpoints on things. So, no, it's brilliant.
We're a small trust that was set up by a woman called Elsie Steele, who was a long-standing member of the St. James Presbyterian Church. And she gifted her property in Mount Eden to be used as a residence for old and needy people in Auckland, all right? The trust was subsequently changed. In fact, she saw that perhaps property wasn't the right way to go, which is what Rob has just expounded on. And so she allowed, by a codicil to her will, to the property to be sold and the proceeds to be applied for basically infirm, old, or needy people. Now, the or was put in after an Act of Parliament because originally it was and it just shows you how you get caught up if you don't do it, you know, in some detail to begin with. So, in fact, trust law says that the beneficiaries, and you're getting back a wee bit to what Rob was saying, the beneficiaries are infirm, old, or needy people within Auckland. So you have to bear that in mind the whole way through, according to trustee law. And that's something that a lot of people get a bit wound up over. They widen it a wee bit, but we have to make sure that any grants that we give are in those categories. Now, because the property was originally given as a retirement home, the grants have to have something of a property or retirement flavour, because that was the charitable intent of the settlor originally, all right? Anyway, the board that we have for Elsie Steele is set up under the management of Northern Presbytery of the Presbyterian Church, but in fact the trustees are the trustees, the church property trustees in Wellington, all right? So in other words, any grant that is passed by the board has to go through Northern Presbytery down to Wellington to be approved by the trustees. So there is quite a modicum of challenge for all those three things. But fortunately, it has been fined down to the work being done by mainly the board. But it puts a responsibility on the board to make sure that they fully cover all the aspects. But the board meets 4 times a year, twice in person and twice by Zoom, to consider all the applications and supporting documents. It has been a practice to present the grant at the premises of the recipient so that we can see in actual practical terms what's being done. But of course, St. James Church has been dissolved, the Presbyterian Church. So in fact, you can't do that anymore at the church, but that doesn't matter. It's being done at the recipient's premises. I get back to the beneficiaries, infirm, old or needy people within Auckland, and it's done on the basis that they have to complete an application form, and the application form says, in effect, the priority is given to organisations who apply for one-off funding rather than ongoing projects, and to those who have not received funding over the past 3 years. Sometimes you have a situation where life, in the form of food banks and things like this, catch up with us, and so we have to break the 3-year question, and those discretionary grants, which are mainly for food, applied without the 3-year question, but in smaller amounts to try and help the food banks. The board were concerned originally because the proceeds of the sale of the property went into what was basically a cash fund, and this brings up another aspect of trustee law that says basically you have to act as a prudent person when you're investing, and having all your funds in a cash fund wasn't terribly prudent. So pressure was brought to bear on the church property trustees in Wellington to see if they could do something about this, and in fact they then went to one of the professional fund managers and set up a long-term fund so that the money could be invested rather more widely. The total amount of money involved is $2.5 million, and the board seeks to make grants of roughly 70,000 every year, and over the years they've given grants of something over $800,000 to various organisations. It's a very widespread list of recipients. The grants are really for one-off funding, all right? They're not involved with expenses of operation. They're more in the capital scene, all right? And they have to be supported by an application and also by audited accounts. Now, I take Rob's point about going through them. You don't need to go through them over a weekend. You can do the summary fairly quickly, I would have thought. But it does bring up an issue which is quite important. And you find people making an application for a grant where they can quite easily fund it themselves out of their own cash or their own asset value. It's also necessary to look at the charitable status of the recipients, because sometimes you have a situation where we want to avoid something like the tax situation getting a bit murky. And of course, you've got that a wee bit with people who are a charity but setting up a commercial operation, and the Inland Revenue doesn't like this very much. And I guess it'll change over the years. But the members of the committee have a broad general experience and quite a lot of knowledge of the needs of the Auckland. We need to be prompt in our research and our response to applicants. But you find that the people like age concern, leukemia, and blood and so on, you find Red Cross, and everything is looked at in terms of the aged, beneficiary, which is something that all trustees have to keep very much aware of. So whereas it's Presbyterian based, the actual beneficiaries, again, I have to stress this, are infirm, old or needy, and only in those 3 categories do we give grants. So really, that sums us up. There is a move. The looks at dividing our grants into two aspects. One is the discretionary because of the cost of living problems for smaller amounts, and the more long-term people who need a bit of capital to build something or buy something which is of long-term benefit to the beneficiaries under those three aspects. So that really sums up. It's a small trust done by a member of the congregation from way back. All right, I think the house went off the site to somewhere on the North Shore, so it ends up with you in the North Shore where you are. Or so really that sums up what is basically a small charitable trust.
Wonderful. Thanks, James. Appreciate that. So a few questions for you. When you say Auckland, is it Greater Auckland, like Bombay?
Yeah.
Is there a set space within Auckland, or it's Greater Auckland?
Good question. If you look at Auckland, the original province was actually half the North Island.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was in 1856 or something like that, wasn't it? Dissolved.
Way before you and I were born, but we'll take your word for it.
Exactly. So in Auckland, we refer more to the Auckland area under the Greater Auckland City.
Okay. So it's under sort of the super city type boundaries.
Yeah. Yep.
So, and also you commented about the need for audited accounts. So some of the smaller organisations, obviously with the changes, they don't have to be audited now. They could either be reviewed or just or not. So do they have to have audited accounts?
No. Some of the discretionary applications, we had an interesting one where a guy was doing work for one of the organisations in West Auckland, and he needed financial help with the mower and the gear that went with the mower. So we were talking about really a fairly small grant, but with no accounts whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And you mentioned some of, like St John, Age Concern, sort of larger organisations. So, but you've got, in comparison to some others, a smaller amount to give away. And if you do, so do you look at the reserves? Because some of those organisations have quite high reserves. So,
Yes.
And you're giving a smaller amount. So would you go to the bigger organisations where it's going to have a smaller impact, or some of the smaller organisations where your grant would have quite a large impact?
Yeah, I think what you get is quite a definite divide between some of the smaller organisations and particular food banks and people like that who need help, because of the cost of living. And so they would get a smaller amount, but probably more regular. And the bigger amounts are for specific capital items to buy something for example, the Millimore Foundation buying stuff, or St John's buying those stretchers that lift people off the ground, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Is there a minimum or maximum amount that you can apply for?
$30,000, but in fact, over recent years, the maximum has been somewhat less than that, but around about the 10,000 or thereabouts.
Mm-hmm. And how do you get a copy of the application form?
How do we get it?
How do people get an application form to be able to apply?
Yeah, they go to the Presbyterian Church, and the secretary of the mission in Dunning provide that for anybody who's interested.
Included in that.
Yeah. She's a very efficient person, and we rely on her tremendously for all the backing up of documentation, so that the board have less work to do in terms of looking at all the applications. She does a great job.
And she's on the call here currently, so thank you, Sharon. It's all good. So last question. Would changing a community building to make it accessible for old, infirm people be acceptable as a request?
Yeah, sure, we'd look at it, but you're talking about fairly major capital items, and so we would end up with a situation where we may contribute and not pay for the whole lot.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you. Sharon, I appreciate you are on the call. Maybe you might like to put the email address for people to contact you to get a copy of the application form in the Q&A box, and so people can get that if they want to. But thank you, James. Really appreciate you being here this morning. And again, I appreciate you stepped in at short notice. You did really well. Thank you. All good.
You're talking about two different things. You know, ANCAD and the Mount Wellington Licensing Trust are talking about much bigger funding situations than we are. We're smaller.
Yes, and that's why it's great that you're here to give people an opportunity to hear about a wide range of different funders that are available out there for them to apply to. So it's great that you're here. Thank you so much.
Well, the one thing I would stress is trustee law in New Zealand, right, has to be looked at whenever you have beneficiaries, because they are the people who actually have to be looked after.
Great. Thank you. Simon, your turn. You've got a couple of poll questions for our attendees.
Thanks, Stephanie, very much. And folks, we'll just launch the last poll if we could involve your opinions here. So I'm going to go ahead. These are the two questions for you. The first one here, how would you describe your organisation's funding maturity? Now, a single answer, are you new to the grant funding area? Do you have some experience but you're still learning? Are you an established grant applicant? Which one of those would you put yourself in? And the second question, once you've done that, if you would kindly respond to, what are your biggest funding challenges right now? You can answer more than one if you like, and there's several options there for you. So that would be awesome if you could just fill in that, and we'll get a good idea of where folks are at.
Well, I guess, can I answer?
I'll go ahead and share this very, very shortly. All right, folks, look, I'm going to stop this and share the results. Thank you for what you have popped in there, and let's have a look at it. All righty, folks, so here we go. We've got the question one, how would you describe your organisation's funding level of maturity? A little bit of a mix, some clearly new to the grant funding scene, and then others with a fair bit of experience or very established. So that's great to become aware of that for those that are in the room. And the second question there, Stephanie, what are your biggest funding challenges right now? A real mix, clearly identifying the right funders, most people have put, understanding the funder priorities, that's why we're here, and then writing strong applications, demonstrating it. It's pretty much all of it, really. So there we go. Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks, folks.
Thank you. James, if I could just ask you to mute, that would be really handy. Thank you. Our next speaker is Charmaine Hall, Grants Manager at the Four Winds Foundation. Welcome, Charmaine. Great that you can be here today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And I think Simon's going to run your PowerPoint for you. Yep.
Thank you.
I'll get there very shortly. There we go.
Okay, so Four Winds is a Class 4 gaming trust, which means that we adhere to DIA regulations in regards to funding. Our funding comes from gaming machines. We currently have 25 venues in the North Island, and the majority of these are in Auckland. And we prioritise funding organisations or funding organisations benefiting areas that our venues are in. We only accept applications via our portal, and all applicants must be an incorporated society or have some form of legal standing. So being a charitable trust or a school or scout group or something like that. And we fund every month. So that was just a quick overview. So these are the categories that we fund: sport, community, health, welfare and rescue services, research and education, arts and culture, and environment and animals. Next slide. So our NPC, which is our Net Proceeds Committee, they meet every month to consider the applications. They're generally held the last week of the month, and applicants receive a result generally by the end of the month. Deadline is the 25th day of the month. This used to be the last working day of the month, but this was changed quite a few months ago, maybe even a year ago. And that is all day on the 25th if you're still submitting at 11:55 p.m. Just the 25th is obviously Christmas Day, but also some other public holidays every once in a while. If it's a weekend or a public holiday, our staff are not at work during those days, so we do recommend that you get your applications in before the 25th of the month. Also, that does help us get through our applications all throughout the month, and so if you want to submit your application earlier in the month, we are more than happy for that to happen. We of the next month. And on our website, we actually do have our funding rounds there with a kind of an approximate date of when it would be a good idea for you to apply for an event or a need in certain months. Thank you. So applications must be done on our online portal, which can be found on our website. We only accept one application per month. We have a limit of 4 applications per year, and we would like any previous outstanding accountability done before we consider your next application. We know that this sometimes isn't always possible if you're doing something like salaries, which you might be asking for every quarter. So that is discretionary for us. And as I said before, you must be an incorporated society or have some other kind of legal standing. So we generally fund 3 months of costs or 3 months before an event, 3 months when an event is going to be held. So we'll fund 3 months of salaries, 3 months of power, water, other utilities. But also when we say 3 months is that we'd like you to apply for needs for, so say you're going to a sports tournament. Of course, we don't want you to apply for a sports tournament in October at this time of the month. We want something that's within the next 3 months of our funding. We cannot fund any events that have already occurred. So anything like a deposit on a accommodation booking, we will not fund because it's happened before the meeting. As I said before, results are communicated by email. Please don't ring us and ask us what your results are. And we will also not tell you that over the phone any other way. Our accountability documents are due within 3 months. So the fact that we fund every month means that we're like quick turnarounds for our accountabilities. You can call us or email us at any time. We are more than happy to help you with an application over the phone or via email. And if you have any questions whatsoever, please get in touch with us, because we're actually there to help you. So when you make an application, you need to specify the purpose for what that is for. If you do receive funds from us, you can't just decide, well, I'll use those funds for something else. So if you've applied to us for funding to go to a sports tournament, and we give you funding for van hire, and you decide that actually you need that money for accommodation, you'll need to refund us. So you do need to make sure that you apply for what you need the money for, and that you use it for what you have asked for. When we approve funding, our application form has an approved fund, a preferred funder and a preferred supplier and a competitive supplier. Our approval letter states the approved supplier, and you must use that supplier unless there is a reason why you can't. Maybe they're too busy, maybe they can't supply what you asked for, and so you do need to request a variation for that. As I said before, any funds not used for the approved purpose must be refunded. And if you do receive funding from another organisation for the same purpose, which covers all your requirements, then you must refund that as well. We don't mind you asking for funding from other funders at the same time, but if you do receive funding, you do need to tell us so that we can either make our compliant amount less, or if you don't need the money at all, then we just can take it out of our system. Priority is given to applications or applicants that are within the TLA, which is the Territorial Local Authorities, areas that we have venues in. We also fund national organisations, so you may be a national organisation based in the South Island, but if you do national work, then we will fund that. We put aside a certain percentage of our funds for that. We recommend that you check that we have a venue in your area before submitting an application. We're quite aware that it can take a little bit of time for you to do it, and if you're based in the bottom of the South Island and you're looking to go to a tournament in Dunedin, then you're very unlikely to get funding from us. So please do check. And also venues do change, so check them before you make an application with us. That's also on our website. So what we can fund, we fund event costs, portaloos, fencing, security, stage hire, traffic management, tournament costs, van hire, accommodation, flights, sports equipment, balls, goals, uniforms. These can be playing uniforms only. We don't fund any coaches, any managers, or any training uniforms. We also don't fund any sideline uniforms, such as a raincoat or a warm-up jacket or a warm-up tracksuit. We cannot fund anything like socks, anything that's going to be used for personal use. That's all of our equipment that we provide funding for must be retained by the organisation, cannot be given to a member of the organisation. We fund salaries, we fund building costs, playgrounds and play equipment, IT equipment, and more. So there are this is a list of unauthorised purposes. This is from the DIA generally. We fund no food and entertainment. We fund no prize money, and we do need to know if you do have prize money at any of the tournaments that you are asking for information for. We fund no fuel or mileage, first aid kits, personal items, drink bottles, mouth guards, socks, dress uniforms. We are not able to fund individual sports persons, and we fund no professional sports or high performance athletes. We do not fund events or trips that are predominantly social in nature, and we do have a more extended list on our website, so please have a look at that. Okay, to make your application, if you head to our website, there is a Apply Now button, which will take you through to our portal. You just need to create a login for that and then link to your organisation. We have instructions for that if you have trouble, so please give us a call or an email and ask for the instructions, but it is really quite a simple thing. Sometimes though, there might be something like sometimes the organisations are in the system, but maybe there's no bank account details there, so we will need to fix that. Please ensure that you've got all the required. You can start an application and it stays in draft form for maybe 3 weeks, I think, before it expires. So you don't have to do it all in one go. But also, if you send us the incorrect information, we will just send it back to you. So it would be good to make sure you've got it all right before you start. All quotes and signed documents must be less than 3 months old at the time of application. Please select the correct purposes and the TLAs in the application and read the questions in the application and answer the questions accordingly. And as well as that, just keep your organisation settings up to date. For example, things like numbers of members that you might have. Next slide.
Just frozen a little bit here, Charmaine. Give me a moment.
Okay, so of course there's going to be some documentation that you require. We require the confirmation of your bank account so that we can pay you the money. You need to provide a resolution and a declaration from your organisation. Resolution is an agreement that was made at your committee meeting. You can also provide your copy of your minutes for the resolution, as long as you stated in your meeting or in your minutes that you resolved to apply for for wins. We have templates for both our resolution and declaration on both the portal and the website, and we really do prefer for you to use these. You will need 2 quotes for items. So if you're wanting to get some portaloos, you need to talk to 2 portaloo companies. If you're asking for a salary, you do need to provide the job contract, which includes the job description and any salary variation letters that apply to that as well, so that you've got the correct salary in there. You will need signed financial statements. We don't require audited financial statements, but we do require them to be signed, and that is the main basis of what is required from a basic application. If you're a school, you'll require an endorsement from a principal. So depending on what kind of organisation you are, sometimes there might be some other kind of documentation. So check that on our website. Okay, well, so once you've made your application, it's a good idea to check that you're receiving our notifications by email. We send pretty much all of our correspondence via our portal, and the portal sends you a little email saying 4 Winds would like some information, please log on to your portal to see what the information is. And also to get your results, they come by email. So if you're not receiving our notifications, you won't even know if you've received funding from us. Read and respond to any questions or requests that we send you in a timely manner. When you've sent your application in and we start working through it, we generally give, and we ask for information, we give you 5 working days to reply. That doesn't mean if you don't reply within 5 working days that you're automatically scrubbed. It just means that we're getting everything going through. Since we're working, we only really have 3 weeks to get these applications through, and we have pretty much over 200 applications a month. So we're just trying to keep the ball rolling. Then when you receive funding, please check your approval letter so that you use the correct supplier, or to see if we've had any conditions on that. Sometimes we might put a condition on something. Sent us a large quote for sports uniforms, and we're only funding the junior aspect of that. The conditions will be junior uniforms only, something like that. So please check that you're adhering to those conditions. And then please submit your accountability on time as well. You do receive automated messages telling you when your accountability is due. So you do get plenty of warning about them. Request a variation if you need to change a supplier or request an extension. If you need an extension, maybe due to the fact that your painter couldn't make it, or you are still trying to raise enough funds, maybe you're a school or something like that and you're trying to put a playground in, just send a request for an extension over the portal, and we assess these once a week. Please let us know if a contact person has left your organisation and we can remove them. Of course, once these people are on our system, they have access to your information. So if they leave, it's a good idea for you to let us know, or to make sure that they are unlinked from our portal. Otherwise, they can still access your information. And as well, please let us know if you receive funding from another funder for the same purpose. Okay, how you can thank us. We love to get photos of how you've used the funds, and we do require permission to use these maybe on our website, or other presentations that we have. You can download our 4 Winds logo from our website, and you can use it in your newsletters or social media. Post on your social media accounts about how we have funded you. You can install signage on vehicles that we have funded, or buildings, or if we've made a contribution to a certain item. We have flags, teardrop flags that you can use at your events. You're welcome to borrow those. Of course, support your local venues. It's very thankful when we receive your accountabilities on time. And if you've got any other questions about thanking us, you're welcome to contact us. So there you go. That's just an overview of how things work here at 4 Winds.
Charmaine, thank you. That's great. A few questions for you. When you say you can apply 4 times a year, is that regardless of whether it's successful or not, or is it 4 successful applications a year?
That is the 4 applications. So that is regardless if you are successful or not. So yes.
And have you seen an increase in applications, but you've got a decreased in amount of money to give away, or are things pretty much standard over the time?
We've definitely seen an increase in applications, and yes, we have seen a decrease in the amount of funding we have. Would you consider utility costs or insurance costs? It's a question.
Yes, we do fund those. Mhm. Salaries from an anonymous attendee. Do you prefer to fund frontline salaries, or would you consider admin, the general manager, etc.? Also, how about contractor wages, e.g. a 3-month contractor to help with a capacity building element the organisation needs?
Yes, we do fund. We fund most salaries. We do have a salary cap on general managers or CEOs generally. But we are aware as well that some organisations only have one paid staff member, so it kind of depends on how many paid staff there are, whether we would fund the higher up, I suppose. We do fund contractors as well, and we do fund admin staff.
Great. Do you fund vehicle leases or to purchase a vehicle?
We don't fund vehicle leases, but we do fund purchasing vehicles.
Mm-hmm. How close does a venue need to be? So, for example, this person's in West Auckland, with QMU venue the most local?
It really, as long as they're in that TLA, we will consider it. So that is I'm quite sure what TLA they are in, but sometimes as well, if they're out of the TLA but they're close, like I know that we have funded new venue, so it really does depend.
How does someone find out what TLA?
Our portal, and you put your address in, it actually does just pop up. Also, I think you can, like, it's actually, you can just search up TLAs for Auckland or other regions.
Great. You can also go to the granted.gov.nz site, which has info from the Regulating Gambling for Aotearoa New Zealand and the Department of Internal Affairs, which gives you an interactive map. So you can see where the venues are, all the different societies, and makes it easier to just find out as a funder in your area, yes, which answers a couple of the questions that are here for you. Yep. How much do you give away? How much is your funding envelope for each round? Is it the same each time?
We give away approximately $1 million a month. That does depend on what our funds are, of course. Some months we have low months and other months we have high months, and it all depends on how people are using our venues.
Fair enough. So Tiffany's on Great Barrow Island, great spot. We don't have a venue on the island, but could we fall within range of any of the Auckland venues that you have?
I wouldn't think so, no.
Sorry, Tiffany. Do you have a preference for local versus national applicants?
No, we don't.
Do you work with sports clubs who are needing a third-party funding for property on council facilities?
I would think so.
Okay, so maybe have a chat with you.
Yeah, maybe they can contact us about that. Yep.
Yeah. Just touching on cash reserves again, if a club has a good amount of cash reserves, will this hinder the chances of the application being successful?
I think when we talk about sports clubs, it's not really so much, but like for some of the national organisations, they do have large reserves, so we do take that into account. Okay, there's a few questions on where you cover. Do you cover Manurewa? Yes.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Do you cover Mount Roskill?
Yes, Mount Roskill is in our Albert Eden TLA, so yes. We actually cover all of Auckland, yeah, but it really depends on we do split our funds into those specific 13 TLAs over Auckland. So one area of Auckland, like particularly South Auckland, we have more funds, and other areas we don't have as much funds.
Okay, I know there's a lot of information on your website, and certainly the granted.govt.nz website's really helpful as well. Charmaine, thank you. Oh, there's one more question pop up. So can you apply for funding at multiple TLAs if the organisation works across Auckland?
Yes, you can.
Yep.
And that is part of our application question. One of the questions is, it actually is worded a little incorrectly, but it says, are you applying for funding over multiple regions? It should be multiple TLAs, and you just tick yes to that, and you can put your multiple TLAs in there.
Yeah, and if someone wants to meet with you, I've got some questions, your contact details are all on the website. So thank you.
Yes.
Shomini, thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here today and sharing that information. I know Four Winds is a...
You're welcome.
Our last speaker for today is Sam Farquhar, Specialist Advisor Northwest at Auckland Council, to share general tips and information around funding. Welcome, Sam. Glad you're here with us today.
Kia ora, thank you for having me. I am a ko-Sam tuku inga, te kuanuhere o Tamaki Makaurau. I'm a Specialist Advisor with Auckland Council, as Stephanie mentioned. However, today I'm not speaking specifically or on any council grants. It's not an area I work in. I work for the community wellbeing team, but I can certainly leave to someone there. So if we can move to the second page, Simon. So one of the most important things, grant funding as an organisation, it's really a great idea to start with a calendar of all the funders that you're considering applying for. It's helpful to have a really good look out there and put something together that identifies what you're actually funding for and the closing and opening dates. The number of people who, in my experience of working in funding, that have forgotten or thought the date was much further out and then got caught happens quite regularly, and it's quite a good thing to have that calendar so that you can be keeping an eye on those things. I would also say research your funders. So there's so many funders out there, but try and have a good read of their website and the types of funding that they offer. You know, would they suit specific costs or projects as opposed to ongoing operational costs? Some funders don't like to fund wages, and so, you know, if you're spending all that time typing in the application and then it comes down to it, it's a lot of time wasted when you could have been looking at another funder. Is there a similar service or organisation delivering the same mahi as you? And why are you different? Often a funder might have multiple applications and there may be several budgeting services, for example, applying in the same area. You know, why do you stand out? You know, funding's incredibly competitive at the moment, and what sets you apart? And I think Josh touched on that also around showing the evidence of need. Why is your service, you know, why is the need of your service so important? Setting yourself apart. Who is your target market? So is it youth? Is it elderly? Is it women? Is it men? Is your mahi for a social service, a cultural event, or educational purposes? So being really clear and precise around who you're trying to attract when you're putting that funding application together. And a really good example, if you're not confident and you're not used to writing funding, is to go into the actual funders portal and copy and paste the questions onto a Word document, and then practice writing that funding into that Word document. And you can always share that with other members of staff who might be a bit more experienced, or it's really helpful. So when you go back in, there may be other stuff that you can put on that funding application, particularly if you're new to funding. If your application is for cost towards an event, one of the other things that I used to regularly see is that people would put in an application for a big event such as Diwali, and some funders can take up to 4 months to actually have an application accepted. And if you're funding an event that's happening in that period of wait time, quite often once we get through to the very end of assessing applications, that application could be declined because it's retrospective. So it's really important to check with the funder around aligning your event towards the date that funding is notified. So that may be having a korero with a funder and finding out, you know, what is the actual notification time of funding application. So if you see that a funding application notification is due in April, maybe putting, your event needs to be happening in May or further along. So just something to be really mindful of. Simon, you can click over. Can we change the page, Simon? Cool, thank you. Again, ensuring your application aligns with the funder's purpose and outcome. So taking that time to really check what those things are. And if it's quite broad and you're a little bit unsure, making contact with that funder and just seeing if it fits in there. Sometimes that is really helpful, because some funders won't fund activities such as backpacks and school bags for children going to school, because that's considered educational. So making sure that you have a really clear understanding that it fits within their purpose. I always believe that a short description of your organisation, including an overview of what you do, who you do it for, and the benefit, keep it simple, but it's a really good way for a funder to understand what you're doing. Some funders have hundreds of applications and they might not necessarily know every organisation. So having a little bit about what you do really does help. Being specific, state very clearly what the costs are you're applying for. Are you going for wages? Are you going for equipment, resources? Is it mileage? Is it accounting costs? Rather than being quite broad, it helps them if they're only going to offer partial funding to your application. They might look at it and identify that wages or an equipment, they have the funding that they can allocate to that, but they might not be able to fund the whole application. It makes it much easier to break that down. Explaining the impact, how many people are going to be going to what you're doing, or is it a big event? Can you give a kind of an estimate? How many people are going to benefit from that? Is it a course that 24 people are going to be attending over a period of 3 months? Are you going to run 3 courses? Giving some idea of how many people benefit from it is helpful. Providing up-to-date financial statements, usually an annual budget for the organisation, their financial statements. Sometimes a photocopy of your bank account or a bank statement may be required. So make sure you've got all that stuff ahead of time. Sometimes in the past we've had accounts where we've seen that are quite significantly in deficit, or have a significant amount of money in the account. And it's really helpful if you can kind of give a bit of an explanation around that, particularly if your expending has increased quite remarkably from the year before. Is that because there's been an increase in demand for your service? Is it because you've missed out on funding and that's why you're in deficit? There wasn't any funding that you could raise. Just like that, if you've got tagged common for big organisations to have quite a significant amount of money in the bank, particularly if they've sold a building. And so if you have that money, it's really helpful to know that it's tagged for something specific, because quite often a funder might look at that and say, well, you're quite well resourced compared to other applications coming in. So, if you've got anything more than 24 months of operating capital, it's probably a good idea to let people know why that's there, if it's specifically tagged for something. Can we change the page then? Cool. Letters of support. Sometimes some funders will allow you to attach a letter of support to what you're doing. That's really helpful, particularly if it's a service that is a huge gap, such as a need around budgeting, and you're providing that to a third-party organisation or in another area, sewing course, or there's an activity that you're providing for a school. Having that support letter from the school to show why there's a need for it is really important, and that you're a good organisation and you're trustworthy and reputable. As Charmaine mentioned, a signed resolution, quite often some funders will have an expectation that you have a signed resolution, and a lot of the gaming funders do. And so, you know, making sure that that committee meeting prior to when the application opens, that you've gone and you've had that resolution agreed to at your committee meeting. Nothing is going to apply and then discovering you haven't got a resolution and then you have to wait another month because you're unable to get it before the next round. Up-to-date information, one of the things that a lot of funders will look at, they'll go onto charity services, they'll look at your annual returns, they'll check to see that your website might be up-to-date, and some of what you're telling us in your funding application can be seen on your Facebook page or your website. You know, is the charities register up to date as well? So just some of those minor things to see whether you're functioning well. Yep. Next one. And then finally, if you're an organisation or a small group and you're still emerging, so you might not have 12 months worth of financial accounts, or you're an informal group, you may need to consider funding through a larger, more established organisation. A number of funders allow this as long as it is clear in the application that the money is being applied for on your behalf and that you have an agreement in place between the actual umbrella organisation and yourself. And there is a number of organisations out there that do that. So, you know, it may be worth a conversation with the funder if they can direct you to some that they're aware of, or you may know some in your community that you can approach. In some cases, umbrella organisations can receive a fund holder fee, and that's for administering your funding and holding it. But you will need to check with your funder if they allow that and how much they allow. There have been cases where fundraisers have actually applied on behalf and included that fee as part of the application, and a number of funders are not allowing that. So you actually have to be able to set aside that funding before you apply for that application, and it needs to be paid separately. And finally, it's just a really basic example of a funding calendar or plan of, you know, just something that you can have on hand to update on a regular basis to kind of track your funding as well. Thank you. So, any questions?
Great. Thanks, Sam. I don't know if you can answer this one. I had to step out for a phone call earlier. So are any funders using AI to assess funding applications that you're aware of? And if so, how is it being used?
I can't answer that question, but I have been in the room where funders have talked about it. There are definitely more community organisations using AI to draft their application. And I would always recommend checking that, because sometimes applications that do come across have big gaps in them and they're not quite clear, and that can result in your application not being considered.
Mm-hmm. Charmaine, I see that you're still on the call, so hopefully you're still listening. Do you use AI to assess your applications? No? Okay, we'll move on then. So, thanks, Sam. Appreciate you being here and for your tips and the information provided. So as we come to the end of today's funding forum, I would like to ask Fiona Brennan from ANCAD to speak.
Kia ora koutou, everyone. I just want to give a huge thank you to all our guest speakers. You've shared such a wealth of information and advice, lots to absorb. And I'm sure all of our funding applications and discussions with our funders will be stronger, clearer, and we'll be providing all the right information you need as a result of the advice that we've received this morning. We really welcome the openness and flexibility of funders for discussion and in terms of sharing information available, while appreciating different communication preferences of specific funders with different capacities. We also really appreciate the conversations around reducing barriers to funding, particularly for grassroots community groups, and just that flexibility to have the conversation. I would like to acknowledge the incredible work that comes from both our community and our funders working together to have impact and creating change in our communities. And that ongoing partnership, I think, will continue to really shape our communities as we move forward. Huge thank you to all of you participating in this morning, and for the really good questions that I think were questions that many of us were holding in the back of our minds. So thank you for everyone for asking all of those questions and for taking the time to participate this morning. We wish you all the very best. Kia kaha, and we hope that all goes well in your organisations. Please don't forget that ANCAD is here to support you as you move forward. And just a final plug, if you haven't already re-registered and you are an incorporated society, please do try and make progress with that in the coming weeks in order to protect all of your funding lines and funding as we move forward into this new year. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Fiona. Just a response from Charmaine, no, they don't use AI. So it's all done by a real person. I would also like to thank all our speakers and to you for attending. It's appreciated you've taken time from your day to be here. Just a reminder that the speakers' presentations we're provided will be emailed to you. Don't forget to get a copy of your 2026 funding guide via the ANCAD website and to check out other training opportunities that ANCAD offers via the Lift Aotearoa program. Also, a quick 2-question survey should appear at the end of the webinar. Please take a moment to complete, as your feedback is really important. So again, our thanks to all. Take care and enjoy the rest of your day.